I didn't hear anything. Yep. Start over then. The wage sheaf offering, which will kick off the beginning of our 50-day count toward Pentecost, is an easily overlooked day. Few are aware of counting required to observe Pentecost. Notice it because the count for Pentecost begins with the day of the wave sheaf offering. Possibly many of us were once unaware of this because the church made it too easy for us. They supplied all the days in the calendar showing the holy day dates many years in advance. Since the day of Pentecost had already been determined for us, we were unaware that the count toward Pentecost with the ancient Israelites made the obscure wave sheaf offering of the Old Testament in doubt for many. It begins in the evening of the Sabbath that falls during the days of unleavened bread. But a day was already set aside for it, going back to the Exodus from Egypt, long time before that. Occurring on only one day each year, the day of the wave sheaf offering is not designated a holy day by Yahweh, as some assert. But it is far from minor or obscure in its meaning. In fact, we should say that without what it means to our salvation, without it, there would be no salvation. That's how important it was and is. The primary instruction regarding the wave sheaf is found in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, the 9th verse. Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, the 9th verse. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the sons of Israel, and say to them, when you have come into the land which I give to you, and shall reap the harvest of it, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh to be received for you. On the next day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. Not after the seventh day, although it does fall that way every once in a while. But after the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which was a Sabbath, in which no servile work was to be done. Verse 12, and you shall offer that day when you wave the sheaf a male lamb. Sound familiar? With blemish of the first year for a burnt offering to Yahweh. And its food offering shall be 2/10 part of fine flour mixed with oil. A fire offering to Yahweh for a sweet savor. And the drink offering of it shall be of wine, the fourth part of a hin, And you shall eat neither bread nor parched grain, nor green ears, until the same day, until you have brought an offering to Yahweh. He eats first, then you eat, in other words. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, in all your dwellings. And you shall count to you from the next day after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. Sounds like to me the period of counting Pentecost. It is the same thing. Verse 16. To the next day after the Sabbath, 7th Sabbath, you shall number 50 days, and you shall offer a new food offering to Yahweh. And many, because of the lack of knowledge about this, for a long time, the Monday after became Pentecost for many. And now you know that was a mistake. And you shall offer a new food offering to Yahweh. Many, not fully understanding that the wave sheaf, while connected to the Passover, now was hardwired to a day during the days of unleavened bread. Even before Yeshua was martyred at Golgotha. Thus, there is no need, as so many do these days, to wait 3 days for his resurrection to begin your count to Pentecost. That's unnecessary. But there was a second day for that. It is found in the Hebrew Targum of Jonathan. We don't use that because it's not scriptural. But he calls it the day after the first day of Passover, which was the 16th of Nisan, or Abib. We take it from Josephus. He expressly says that in the place of above referred to, and so it is generally understood by Hebrew writers, the account given of this affair is this. The messengers of the Sanhedrin went out from Jerusalem over the brook Kidron to the fields near it on the evening of the feast. In essence, at the going out of the 15th. And at the beginning of the 16th of Nisan. And as I've said so many times in the past, we had already been hornswoggled by the Hebrews already because of their insistence on doing things that the Romans told them to do. The messengers of the Sanhedrin went out from Jerusalem over the brook Kidron to the fields there. In essence, at the going out of the 15th and at the beginning of the 16th, and found the standing corn in bundles, that so it might be more easily reaped. And the neighboring cities gathered there that it might be reaped in great pomp. And when it was dark, one said to them, "Is the sun set?" They said, "Yes. With this sickle shall I reap." They had a great ceremony on this, but on the wrong day. Should have been the 14th, not the 15th. "With this sickle shall I reap?" They said, "Yes. In this basket shall I put it?" They said, "Yes." If on a Sabbath day, he said to them, "On this Sabbath day shall we do it?" They said, "Yes." These questions were put and answered 3 times. Then they reaped it and put it into the baskets and brought it to the court, where they parched it before the fire to fulfill the commandment of parched corn. Then they put it in mills for grinding beans and took out of it a 10th part of an ephah, which was sifted with 18 sieves. 18 sieves. That's a lot of shifting. Then oil and frankincense were poured upon it, being mixed, and it was weighed and brought, and a handful taken and burned, and the rest was eaten by the priests. And when they had offered the omer, they went out and found the streets of Jerusalem full of meal and parched corn. Now everyone could eat because the priests had eaten. There being now full liberty to reap what they would. Now this sheaf of the first fruit was, note this, typical of Yeshua Messiah. It being of barley may denote that the mean estate of Yeshua in his humiliation, and but one sheaf for all the people, may signify that Yeshua is the one mediator, Savior, and Redeemer. Yet as a sheaf comprehends many stalks and grains, so Yeshua has a complication of blessings in him. Yea, he had all his people representatively in him when he was offered for the whole body of his mystical Israel. All the people of Elohim scattered abroad. The manner of reaping by persons deputed by the Sanhedrin on the eve of a festival of Passover, in the sight of much people outside Jerusalem. Kidron exactly agreed with the apprehending of Yeshua in the night near Kidron, better known as Golgotha in this place. That's where they grabbed him from. By persons sent from the Jewish Sanhedrin, and his suffering publicly outside the gates of Jerusalem. It being brought to the priests in the court, and threshed, winnowed, dried, and parched by fire, and ground in mills, may denote the various dolorous sufferings of Messiah Yeshua by means of the priests and elders of the people, and oil and frankincense being put on it, may denote the acceptableness of his sacrifice to Yahweh the Father, and waving of it, his resurrection from the dead, which was on the very day this wave sheaf was waved, which is the first fruits of them that sleep in him, and which sanctifies the whole body of them and ensures their resurrection unto eternal life, if they do what is asked of them. Obedience. Put simply, the day is already set aside according to the Sabbath, observed during the days of unleavened bread. If you research these scriptures and this history, which can be found in the writings of Flavius Josephus, and that's not in the Bible either, but if you read it through, it mirrors everything in the Bible. It's not like a paraphrase. It is exactly worded as the Bible is worded. You will find this has been the case ever since the Hebrews were released from Egypt and were given the holy days and commandments at Sinai. But this is not what I wanted to deal with today. But let's go to the home of Simon the leper. This seems to be where the problems began among the disciples, the Pharisees and the high priest having their own problems with each other. Continue at Matthew, the 26th verse, the first chapter. 26th chapter, the first verse. And it happened when Yeshua finished all these sayings, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover comes, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people assembled together to the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas. And they consulted so that they might take Yeshua by guile and kill him. But they said, "Not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar among the people." I guess the commandments don't apply when your position with the Romans is at stake. Thou shalt not kill, I guess at this point becomes one of the 10 suggestions. Verse 6. And when Yeshua was in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him, having an alabaster box of very precious ointment and poured it on his head as he reclined. But when his disciples saw it, they were indignant, saying, "To what purpose is this waste?" Waste? For this ointment might have been sold for very much and given to the poor, or more appropriately, added to the wave sheaf offering, if you're going to use it properly. Verse 10, when Yeshua understood it, he said to them, "Why do you trouble this woman? For she has done a good work for me. For you have the poor with you always, but you do not always have me. For in putting ointment on my body, she did it for me for my burial." In order to find out what was going on here, you have to do a little flipping around. Being the closest to Yeshua seems to know better what was going on here. Who was closest to him? John. Go to John, the 12th chapter, the 4th verse. John, 12th chapter, the 4th verse. Then said one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, who was to betray him, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" He said this not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and held the money bag, and that 300 denarii would at some point fall into his hands. And carry the things put in, as I said. Verse 7, then Yeshua said, "Let her alone. She has kept this for the day of my burial." At this point, they didn't seem to know what that meant. No one cried out, in other words. It might have been that they wanted that on some level. Thoughts come at several levels. Sometimes you aren't always aware of all of them. Verse 8. For you have the poor with you always, but you do not always have me. Then a great crowd of Judeans learned that he was there, and they did not come for Yeshua's sake only, but also that they might see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the high priests planned to kill Lazarus too, again. These people. Verse 11. Since he was the reason why so many of the Judeans were leaving to believe in Yeshua. The next day, the large crowd that had come to the festival heard that Yeshua was coming into Jerusalem. So they took branches of palm trees and went out to greet him, shouting, "Hosanna! How blessed is the one that comes in the name of Yahweh. the king of Israel. Then Yeshua found a young donkey and sat upon it. As it is written, "Fear not, people of Zion. Look, your king is coming, sitting upon a donkey's colt." I've already went through several times what usually happens the first time you jump on the back of an unbroken a donkey. Miraculously, though, it didn't happen here. That was a miracle in itself. Evil in its pure form is always a fascination for most people. Many will admit it. Others are not so ready to do so. Most actors will tell you that they find villain roles easier to play because they have more nuances to them than the good guy roles do. This is a symptom of being in a world controlled by Satan. You hear it all the time, even in the church. If a person seems to have few visible flaws or is trying to do the right thing, they are called a goody two-shoes, holier than thou, or some other denigrating term like that. But the person with an attitude, everybody likes them. Or a person with a mean streak to him. You'll hear that all the time. I wish I could do that. It would get these people off of me. You could do that yourself. That spineless? Speak up. You don't have to be the bad guy to do that. Just speak up. Or they secretly wish to be that bold. Yay. And after too much of it, people would get away from you too. Attitude is only sought out in radicalized times. In peace, most normal people want peace. But evil acted out by people in positions of public authority are always fascinating because they jump through a million hoops trying to keep up the facade of being for the people, when they know that they are really only looking out for themselves, their positions of authority, or the wealth attained by keeping those positions of power and authority. Let's stop a minute and consider what we are seeing here. We have the hierarchy of the Hebrew elders, the priests, the scribes, and the Pharisees consulting with the high priest of the Jerusalem synagogue as they not whether or not they should kill Yeshua. That decision had already been made. They knew they intended to do that. But what they were looking for were the highbrow stuff, the sociological, political consequences that could result by them being found out about their doing this. That could collapse the whole kingdom of Rome. They knew they intended to kill him. It was just a matter of finding the time and a politically sound method by which to do so. With the people of Jerusalem coming out to meet him and throwing palms and declaring him the king of Israel, the men with Caiaphas felt that they had a charge they could put against him. Yet, they didn't realize that they were breaking a covenant as well as fulfilling a prophecy by doing so. Now, we must understand that Yahweh the Father and Yeshua knew exactly what was going on at this point, because they knew their hearts. He knew it would happen. He prophesied this from the beginning of the world. Yahweh knew he'd made promises to Abraham, Moses, and David. But those promises had caveats. If you do this, I will do this, or that. Many who claim that believers who accept this truth don't love the Hebrews are wrong. We love them, but we recognize that they have broken covenant and are no longer automatically coming into the kingdom of Yahweh. The ones alive at his coming must recognize Yeshua before the first resurrection, or they might miss salvation altogether. Many don't know this. Their hands are in their hands at this point. And will be judged when they are resurrected. The ones who died in antiquity will come up in their resurrection and still must prove that they will keep the covenant that they agreed to keep before receiving any reward. Notice this cryptic prophecy which explains what Elohim is doing. We find it in Zechariah, the 11th chapter, the 4th verse. And so many have these scriptures out of context. They don't even know what they mean. Zechariah, the 11th chapter, the 4th verse. Thus saith Yahweh my Elohim, feed the flock of slaughter, whose possessors slay them, the Romans, and hold themselves not guilty. And they that sell them say, blessed be Yahweh, for I am rich. And their own shepherds pity them not. For I will no more pity the inhabitants of the land, says Yahweh. What? Read that again. For I will no more pity the inhabitants of the land. The land is Jerusalem, by the way. Says Yahweh. But lo, I will deliver the men, every one into his neighbor's hand, and into the hand of his king. And obviously, that king is not him. And they shall smite the land, and out of their hand I will not deliver them. And I will feed the flock of slaughter, even you, O poor of the flock. And I took unto me 2 staves, the one I called Beauty, and the other I called Bands. And I fed the flock. Don't miss this. Verse 8. 3 shepherds also I cut off in 1 month, and my soul loathed them, and their soul also abhorred me. Then said, I will not feed you. That dies, let it die. This is significant stuff here. And that is to be cut off, let it be cut off. And the rest, eat every one the flesh of another. This is an end time prophecy, by the way. Verse 10. And I took my staff, even Beauty, and cut it asunder. Who did it? He did it. The Father did it himself, his own people. Verse 11. And it was broken in that day, and so the poor of the flock that waited upon me knew that it was the word of Yahweh. And I said unto them, if you think it good, give me my price. Here's the hint. And if not, forbear. So they weighed for my price 30 pieces of silver. Who sold for that? Yes. We know where we're at now, huh? It's a little bit different than the story that the world tells you. Verse 13. And Yahweh said unto me, cast it unto the potter, a goodly price, that I was priced at of them. And I took the 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of Yahweh. They planned to sell out the one who brought them out of Egypt, the one that thwarted all of their enemies and continually saved them from calamity after calamity in the personage of Yahweh Elohim. But in order to maintain their high position with the Roman government, they were plotting to have Yeshua murdered. And along came the man who was predisposed to do so. Luke, the 22nd chapter, the 2nd verse. Luke, the 22nd chapter, the 2nd verse. And the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to put him to death, for they feared the people. That kind of shows us where the real power lies, but we don't believe that. They got the guns that we bought for them. Then Satan entered into Judas Iscariot, who was of the number of the 12. Inside job of all inside jobs. He went away and conferred with the chief priests and the officers how he might betray him to them. And they were glad and agreed to give him money. Exactly what? 30 pence. So he consented and sought an opportunity to betray him to them in the absence of a crowd. And note that even the prophesied price was negotiated with Judas. Turn to Matthew, the 26th chapter, the 15th verse. And he said to them, "What will you give me? And I will betray him to you." And they appointed to him 30 pieces of silver. And from that time, he sought opportunity to betray him. Now the Pharisees had an insider who would help them to get to Messiah. This was better than they had hoped. But what was Judas's problem? The same old stuff. Judas being the only Judean among the inner circle of the disciples. All the rest were from Galilee. Judas, while smart, savvy, with money, so much so that he was able to steal from the till occasionally. And it seems that only John was aware of this. That's a unique position. If he says anything, the whole lot of them, he knew it, they would fall apart. He, at that point, kept quiet because he didn't want them to fall apart yet. Always the one with an ear to the ground for the prevailing political winds. He knew that. While many people saw Yeshua's great works, and a growing number of people were becoming convinced that he was the prophesied Messiah, especially with that triumphant entry into Jerusalem on the back of that donkey. Judas was also hearing something else when he put his ear to the ground. He was also hearing of the growing fear and anger of the Pharisees and Caiaphas, the high priest. They felt that Yeshua would ruin their good position and favor with the Roman authorities, and were determined not to allow this, even with 2 of their number voting with the disciples, Gamaliel and Joseph of Arimathea. These men leaned toward casting their lot with Yeshua, and they secretly did. Judas, on the other hand, felt even more uneasy for his own financial future. With Rome hating political problems and the Hebrew authorities plotting against the disciples and their leader, Yeshua, Judas probably thought, what's the use in continuing to follow Yeshua when the whole Judean, Roman-controlled world is turning against him? If I stay with him, the Roman authorities will swallow me up with him. He was afraid, but he was greedy also. And he was still angry about being upbraided by Yeshua for complaining about the anointing oil that never got its way into the treasury bag. Little stuff becomes big stuff in radicalized times. This set him in the perfect state of mind for Satan to enter into him. And he did. This is a lesson for us all. Don't get so angry with someone that you entertain evil thoughts about them. Satan hears those thoughts and he will quickly enter your body. Yet, Yeshua sensed the evil in the room. Go down to John, the 13th chapter, the 21st verse. After saying these things, Yeshua was troubled in his spirit and testified, "Truly, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me." And disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he spoke. One of his disciples, whom Yeshua loved, was reclining at table at Yeshua's side. So Simon Peter motioned to him to ask Yeshua of whom he was speaking. So that disciple, leaning against Yeshua, said to him, "Master, who is it?" Yeshua answered, "It is he to whom I will give this morsel of bread when I have dipped it." So whom he had dipped in the morsel, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. Then after he had taken the morsel, Satan entered into him as if by cue. Yeshua said to him, "What you are doing, do it quickly." He knew what he was thinking, even the thoughts that Satan put in his mind. He read them immediately. Go do what you're going to do. What he said. And we know that after this, when the men left to go to the Garden of Gethsemane. This is where the Roman soldiers, led by Judas, pointed Yeshua out with a kiss. All of this, the rest of it, we should know. But the character of Yeshua during this time is what I want to deal with now. It is imperative that we get this. In his time of dying, he comforted those around him. He knew what was happening and had asked off several times. And it came back negative from the Father. He went ahead and did it. And without any tears, nothing. That's the one that you want to side with. In any circumstance. No man can do that for you. No woman can do that for you. Nobody can do that for you. And that's something else. Betrayed with a kiss. In his time of dying, he comforted those around him. Even after Peter, for instance, who ran away and denied him 3 times. Yet he found him after his return as spirit to ease Peter's mind. And at that point, he would already be saved by him. Continuing in John, the 21st chapter, the 11th verse. John, the 21st chapter, the 11th verse. So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. A lot of fish. And I'm still wondering if that 153 means something. I haven't found anything yet, but it's there. I'll find it. And although there were many, the net was not torn. I think that was the answer right there. 153 fish in an old, torn up thing, and wasn't torn once. That's probably your answer right there. Yeshua said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was their master. Yeshua came and took the bread and gave it to them, and with so the fish, which was now the 3rd time that Yeshua was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Yeshua said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord. You know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" I can't remember them. Every time he said this, it was in a different language and deeper language. And the last one was, And I believe that was Hebrew. And he said to him, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him that third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said to him that third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Yeshua said to him, "Feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and go walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." He then showed Peter the way that he would die glorifying Elohim. But let's be real. After seeing a man scourged, beaten, hailed to a stake, buried, and then brought back to life, after promising you the same power, this had to energize Peter and all of the others in that ministry. They now had proof of a resurrection, and they had forgiveness on their side. Note what happened with John and Yeshua's mother at the stake. John, the 19th chapter, the 25th verse. So many go over this and go rushing through it. I'm not going to rush through it today. But many, by the staros of Yeshua, were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Yeshua saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved, and some say untoward things about that also. I'm not going to do that. I know the truth. When Yeshua saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." He said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her to his own home. No questions asked. Even in this distressed time, nearing death, Yeshua made arrangements to have his mother Mary taken care of. The Pope didn't have nothing to do with it. Hanging next to him were the thieves caught with Barabbas, who was set free as a gift to the Hebrews from Pilate. John, the 18th chapter, the 39th verse. "But you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews? They cried out again, not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. A lot of people pass over this, but by catching Barabbas, they had everybody already that had done the things that they wanted punished. They were all caught together, Barabbas and these other two. By all standards of righteousness, Barabbas should have been in the place of Yeshua. But this wasn't the plan of Yahweh Elohim. Yet in it, one thief found that he would be raised in the second resurrection. But that wasn't an automatic pass for him, as you can see in Luke, the 23rd chapter, the 34th verse. And Yeshua said, Father, forgive him, for they know not what they do. And they cast lots to divide his garments. They were some costly garments if they ripped them and then tore them apart and sold them. They were just wanting that material. And that was some expensive material, in other words. 35. And the people stood by, watching, but the rulers scoffed at him, saying, he saved others, let him save himself. If he is Yeshua of Yahweh, his chosen one. The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine, and saying, if you are the King of the Jews, save yourself. There was also an inscription over him. This is the King of the Jews. One of the criminals who had been hanging railed at him. Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us. Emphasis on us. But the others rebuked him, saying, do not you fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due rewards of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong. And he said, Yeshua, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And he said to him, truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. Some say that he would automatically spirited off into heaven, but that's not what happened here. When he gets there, whenever that is, he gets to state truth about this incident, all the others in his life at that point. And then it's in the Father's hands, Yeshua's hands, whether he gets off for that stuff or not. It's not a done deal, in other words. It's not a done deal. Like I said, this is one of the most misunderstood sentences in the Bible. Many believe that Yeshua is telling this robber that he will be in the kingdom with him that very day. Yeshua would never make such a promise to a felon. if he saw something in him, but he didn't see anything here. The promise is that because of your repentance, you will be given a chance to prove that you will live a good life in the second resurrection. The paradise spoken of is the world, as it will have been reconstructed and reconverted to its original Edenic state, where all men who died not knowing the truth will be resurrected and given a chance to learn the truth and prove that they will live by it. This is the ultimate forgiveness that Messiah offered to us all from the lonely stake at Golgotha. This forgiveness of Elohim offers us everything that the Satan-inspired dangle in front of us and take it away with a smirk. Yeshua smiles and offers it to all of us for simple obedience and love. What can stand against this love? Nothing. Any questions? Any questions? I'm good.